So please join me in welcoming Matthias Magdowski from Germany. Matthias works at Magdeburg University, something like 150 kilometers west of Berlin, if I know well, where he's in charge of, among others, the electrical engineering training. He enjoys experimenting with alternative teaching and learning methods, and in a apparently very successful way, because he received several awards as best lecturer since 2017. And apparently some of these teaching methods involve LaTeX. And Matthias, I will let you speak about that if you wish.
Yeah, thanks for the kind introduction. So I want to speak briefly about a method that I have developed in the recent years. Personalized tasks for our students and corresponding sample solutions. And yeah, this I use in the field for teaching fundamentals of electric engineering. And as you already said, it involves LaTeX and some packages that also some people know, PGFPlots for plots and diagrams and Circuitikz for circuit diagrams. Before I actually start, I want to do a short survey. Just to have some idea what are the people that are listening to the presentation now, and I will put the link into the Zoom chat, and I would ask you to click on this link and cast your vote. I will also say I'm from mathematics, computer science and technology, and let's have a look at the results. Okay, there are two more. There's one more person from science and education, and one more person from education and teaching, and one more person that says, okay, anything else, whatever this is. Okay, but there are now five people that said, okay, mathematics, computer science, technology. This is a little bit what I expected. This is good for me, that then I can a little bit go into more detail about the technical details also from the field that I'm talking about. So some organizational matters, slides are available. I can share a link to the slides after the presentation. There will be a recording, of course, and if you want to ask questions also in between, no problem. You can also, if you don't want to interrupt me, put questions in the chat. And then we will come back to these questions after the talk, or of course, you can also ask questions after the talk. So short overview over the talk. Of course, at the beginning, I will give a motivation why we have developed this method and what problem we're trying to solve with this. And then I go into the LaTeX details and take a look at two of these developed tasks. About two different topics, charge and current and nodal analysis, and yeah, how are these tasks then generated in LaTeX? And at the end, the discussion, some evaluation of the results and what do the students think about it, and yeah, what has come out of it. So why do we do all this? At first, we want to let's say, stop our students from this bulimic learning, learn everything that you need to know about the subject 3 days before the exam, and then puke everything on the paper and forget about it after 1 week. But yeah, still at universities, we'll have kind of these traditional performance assessments. Students are forced to solve tasks alone. They just have, let's say, a paper and the plain calculator. And to be honest, this is not really how you would solve engineering tasks in real life. I mean, it would be kind of strange if Elon Musk says, here you are my best engineer. Now just take this white paper, a pen, and a calculator, go into this room for 3 hours and develop our new electrical car. So the real life demands in the working world more look like this. That of course you have to know something, and of course you need to be able to solve tasks a little bit on your own. But you also need to cooperate with people, and you need to discuss about engineering problems, and you need to make people aware of problems that you are thinking which are important. And yeah, you also must be able to present a solution, or to tell someone why you think your solution is right, but the other solution is wrong. Yeah, so you need to have this discussion ability, and this is nothing that we really assess in these traditional exams and performance assessments. So then a little bit how you can do this. I mean, there are classical e-learning tasks where you can test students' competencies and knowledges, but then the problem with these tasks is always they have to do a calculation, but at the end they only fill in a number in the field, and you can only test the number at the end, but you can not really check the calculation. So that's not good for us, because in such a handwritten solution, students can really show if they have understood about all the details of, let's say, a problem, an approach, how to solve this problem, how to set up a calculation, and then how to do the mathematical calculation. And in this handwritten solution, it's also very easy for students. I mean, you had all these accessibility talks yesterday, yeah, how to write down equations, how to draw diagrams. It's much easier to do this by pen and paper than, if we are talking about first year and second year students. If you tell them now you also need to learn LaTeX, how to write down an equation in an e-learning system, it will be too complicated for them. So handwritten solutions are quite nice. Because you can also easily see student misconceptions, and I've written down, or I've copied some examples here. Here is a student calculated the Fourier coefficient. If you don't know what the Fourier coefficient is, don't care, but it's something that should have the unit volt, and then because some calculation with sine and cosine terms, with angles and radians and degree was involved, students converted these results from volt into volt degree, whatever this should be. Yeah, and this is some misconception that you would never see if the answer to a question is just put a number in a field. Yeah, because then the student would say, okay, volt is something that I should calculate. Then I could maybe convert it into volt degree, but I would not do it because it's not asked for. Yeah, so we have it's easily visible to capture these misconceptions. And here's another one. If you know a little bit about electrical engineering, so this is a complex impedance with a real part and with some imaginary part, and here the student converted it into a time function, which absolutely does not make any sense for this impedance. If this would be a complex current and voltage phasor, then this would make sense, but not for this. And again, a very interesting misconception, but you will only see this in this handwritten solutions. So what we want to have with this personalizable tasks for handwritten solutions, the solution should be handwritten because this is authentic. You can see these misconceptions, and students can easily write down formulas, schematics, diagrams, and so on. If it's personalized, students cannot plagiarize from each other, but they can discuss. They can ask their fellow student in their learning group and say, look, I got this task, you got this task. How can we solve this? And they are invited to discuss about these problems and not only try to solve the problems themselves. Then, of course, if students have written down solutions, someone must check these solutions. And we as teachers don't have enough time to do this. So students should do peer review. This is also interesting for them because then they look at other students' solutions. They see, okay, these other students, they got the same problems like me, or they got different problems, and they have to think about other solutions for similar problems and think someone has tried to solve this similar problem differently than me. Is it still right? Is it still wrong? So I think there are also is a big learning outcome from this peer review. Of course, it also lowers the correction effort for the teachers, but you need to have very good and also personalized sample solutions, because students that were not really able to solve their own question and problem should still be able to do a proper review of other solutions. And then Moodle is a learning management system, and email, you know, so everything should happen electronically with PDF files, for example, so that we don't have this red tape, big piles of paper somewhere that you need to receive from the students and send to the students. So this is the idea. Then I have 3 diagrams, a little bit how it's technically implemented, and then we can come to the LaTeX details, and you see that LaTeX also already appears here. So these are always the students here. The students register in this Moodle, in this e-learning system. I get a list from all the students, and I did all the programming in MATLAB. Why? Because I know MATLAB, I'm an engineer. You could choose any other programming language, Python, for example, but I did it in MATLAB. And from this list of students, I get the names and I get the matriculation numbers, and I use the matriculation numbers as start seed for random number generator. So every matriculation number generates a different task, but the same number generates the same task again. So if something goes wrong, so these tasks are randomized, but still a little bit fixed. Yeah? And so then LaTeX generates a PDF, the task and the sample solution will be stored into a folder, and the task is sent via email to the student. And then the student has 1 week to solve the task, has some idea or not, and submits the solution back to this Moodle, back to this e-learning system. I download all the student solutions as a zip file and put them back into MATLAB. And then MATLAB takes the student solutions and the corresponding sample solutions and sends them to other students. Yeah, so each student now gets 2 emails saying, here's the solution of a different student, here's the corresponding sample solution, please review it, please score it. Again, you have 1 week to say if it's right or wrong, and then please submit it back into this e-learning system. And so then this is what the students do. They mark it, this is right, this is wrong. If it's wrong, they always need to say, okay, why do they think it's wrong? Give some score and submit these reviewed solutions back to the learning management system. And again, I download all stuff as a zip file, and then the students at the really end get back their 2 reviews and their own sample solution, so that they can once again check if everything is right or wrong. And then the points that they got are stored in a score list. And to be honest, these points are quite important for the students as some extrinsic motivation, and the points do not count for the exam, but so the students need to collect enough points that they can register for the exam. So that's the idea. So now, how is this implemented in LaTeX? How are these tasks generated in LaTeX? So I will take a look into 2 sample tasks. I think at the time I have 13 tasks developed in total. So this is the first task that I've created, that I've implemented. The task is more or less always the same for all students. So they get a displayed curve of a current, and from the current, as a function of time, they should calculate the charge by integration over time, over 4 time periods. Some initial charge is given, and then they should calculate the charge and again draw it as a curve, display it as a time function. And so the task is the same for all, but each student gets a different diagram. So here for some sample matriculation numbers, I've given different diagrams, and it's always a linear function here, and then 3 constant functions in this other 3 time steps. So one diagram looks like this, and the next one might look like this, and the next one might look like this, and so on. So they all get the same tasks, but they all get different diagrams with different values. So they have to develop more or less an own solution. So how is this done in LaTeX? For these diagrams, of course, I use this PGFPlots package. And so this task, to be honest, is fairly simple. I'm not a really good LaTeX programmer, so I can only do simple stuff in LaTeX. This is what I could do. So here is the seed for this random number generator, and then I generate random integers for the currents at the different instance of time, and then there are some if then else functions. If the random number here is 0, of course it should not be 0. If the current is 0, the task does not make too much sense. So then I set it to 1, and if let's say in 2 adjacent time slots the current has the same value, then it's then I also need to catch this. I think here is something like this: if the current in 2 the previous and the next period is the same, then I just invert the sign so that they are different, for example. And then you plot a diagram out of this in a text picture, in an access environment, give proper labels, and then just use these random numbers that just have been generated and put them into the diagram. That's the idea of these PGFPlots diagrams. So everything there really happens in LaTeX, the random number generation and the creation of the tasks. And then, as said, I also need the sample solutions. So what the students should do is a section-wise calculation, read the time function for this section from the diagram, put it into this formula for the charge, integrate over this linear function here, for example, simplify the formula and calculate the charge at the end of this first time section. And as said, for every student here in this case, it's really the same formula. It's just different numbers, but trust me, for a student that has just started studying electrical engineering and has just survived the first 2 or 3 weeks of his study, this is hard enough. So every matriculation number, just as you can see, just generates different numbers in this at this time very same formulas. And how do I do this? Just again calculate these numbers. Here I have something that trims the zeros at the end so that I really just get these integer numbers and then just put them as PGF math macros in SI commands from the SI unit X package. And this, I think this package got a major update in the recent months. So these commands here will change. I'm still working with the old package, but this is more or less it. Put the numbers into these equations. Okay. And then at the end, students should draw a diagram to check this, a diagram of the charge as a function of the time. And here again, I just create them in PGFPlots. I've not given the LaTeX source here again, but you can see that these diagrams look quite different, and that's the idea. So, and at the end, if the students properly do the calculation and properly do the drawing of the plot, it's fairly easy at the end for other students to check, okay, these 2 diagrams, they really look the same or they do look different, these plots. And so just with these 4 different current numbers, you can generate very different graphical representations of the charge as a function of the time. So this, I have prepared a second survey, and the second survey, I will put again the link in the chat. The second survey is If you are also teaching, and maybe also if you're just doing training somewhere, can you think of similar personalized or randomized tasks that could be used for your subject? And of course, I would say yes, immediately many. And take a look at the result. Okay, and interestingly, there are some people that say, okay, yes, some, but after some thought. I will once again update the results. Okay, no one said no and no how, no way. Okay, interesting. Thanks for your feedback. Yeah, so let's have a short look on a second task. And the second task is about nodal analysis. This is something in electrical engineering, a method to calculate all the voltages, and from the voltages and later on also the currents in a given circuit. And these voltages are called nodal voltages. And already symbols are given here for them. So the task is students should draw these nodal voltages in the circuit, in the given circuit diagram, set up an equation system to calculate these voltages, solve the equation system after inserting the values of the components inside the system of equations. So again, the task is the same for all, but everyone gets a different circuit diagram. Again, they are generated with a random number generator from the matriculation number, and all these circuit diagrams, they always have 3 nodes, a reference node and 3 nodes, and then different elements, current sources or resistors, or current sources in parallel to a resistor, or just a current source between these nodes. And so different matriculation numbers, as you can see, there are always these 3 nodes, but the circuit diagrams can look very, very different with these different options and possibilities that you have there. And so how do I do this? Now I do all the programming in MATLAB. This was too complicated for me, to be honest, to program it in LaTeX with all these. If there's a current source at this position, you need to have a resistor there, because here, to be honest, you really need to be an expert in your field to generate circuit diagrams that where it's possible to calculate them, where the matrix does not get singular, or where you can really solve this equation system, and where there's really just one definite solution of this equation system. So I do everything in MATLAB, and then just generate from MATLAB the LaTeX source code using this Circuitikz package. And then, yeah, you just draw a path from a certain point in the coordinate system to a different point, and then say, okay, there's a short connection, or there's this creates a current source, this creates a resistor, this creates a current source again, and then you can just label them with, say, okay, this is the resistor 1, this is the resistor 2, and so on, and also label the nodes. Put let's say these soldering dots at the nodes, and then say this is node 0, the reference node, node 1, node 2, node 3. And then I can from MATLAB not only generate the LaTeX code, but of course also run PDF LaTeX from a command line and generate the corresponding PDF files. And then a sample solution. Here I've displayed the equation systems, or system of equations that the students should set up to calculate the network. And there are the conductances of the resistors, these nodal voltages, and the current sources that are connected to a certain node. Yeah, and now you can see, if I scroll through these different solutions, that these systems of equations really look different. Of course, it's always a 3 by 3 matrix, 3 unknowns. because the calculation effort should be the same for all students, but these equation systems really look different now. And again, I generate the corresponding LaTeX source code in MATLAB. Say, if there is a resistor connected to this node, then we need to have an entry here and there inside the matrix. If a resistor is connected between two nodes, then we need to have some entry here and there. And if a source is connected to a certain node, pointing towards the node or pointing away from the node, then we have a current source in this vector here with a plus and minus sign. And then, of course, for the MATLAB code, it's no problem to insert all the values, and then, of course, also to invert the matrix to calculate these three unknown nodal voltages. And yeah, so then the equation system or the LaTeX source code of the equation system generated in MATLAB just looks like this. So you have a matrix, you have all the entries inside some equation. Just that no human being needs to write down everything. The computer, the algorithm can automatically generate hundreds and thousands of these tasks and sample solutions. Okay, so what has come out of it? What are some results that are interesting to discuss? So we do these tasks, as you could see from the procedure, in cycles. A cycle is always 2 weeks. Students get the task, have 1 week to solve it, submit their solutions, get sample solutions from the students, and have another week to do the peer review. And after 2 weeks, everything is done. And then we have a 14-week semester, so we can have up to 6 of these cycles during a semester. And in a typical cycle, these tasks are sent to about 200 students. So this is about the number of students that we have in our lecture about fundamentals of electric engineering. And then, not all, but most of the students, so let's say around 150 students, respond and submit a solution. And then they only get points for their own solution if they also do the review and submit these 2 reviews. But some always forget, so you always lose 5 to 10 students, but let's say about 140 students do the review and carry this out. And from my point of view, I don't know if you have experience with teaching at the university. This is quite good. These are quite good numbers. So we could say, okay, this is kind of an excellent activation of the students during the semester to really solve some tasks and not say, "Ooh, the exam is long in the future. Why should I do something now? I have so much time to do it." So it's a quite good long-term preparation for the exam without this teaching to the test that at the end you have the very same problems in the exam that you covered before in some exercises like this. So then, because everything, of course, these score lists are stored electronically and students submit in this e-learning system, you can do some statistics. So look at the typical distribution of the points, for example, and then most of the students really get full points or almost full points. Why? I mean, they have 1 week to solve these tasks. They can do lots of checks. They can also use, of course, a circuit simulator like SPICE to check, are these voltage or are these nodal voltages that I've calculated by hand or maybe using MATLAB, do they fit to the real circuit? Of course, as said, they can ask their fellow students, I will check your solution if you check my solution, and let's see how we can get the best score, and so on and so on. And that's why, in most cases, they have almost full points. And sometimes also just very few. But as I've talked to students, if they are not really sure about their solution, or if they are quite sure that it's wrong, then they do not submit, because why should they then do the review and so on if they do not get any points at all? The next diagram that I would like to show is a typical distribution of the deviation of the points between the two reviewers, reviewer 1 and 2. And then you can see that because of this very detailed sample solutions, the reviewers in most cases also give more or less the same score with very few deviation. And then, of course, there are some cases where the solutions are very strange. Students have done it in a very different way that was given on a sample solution, and then the student reviewers who are not really experts in the field, of course, then they are unsure how to grade it. Should they count points or should they count failures? And yeah, sometimes it's also really difficult then to grade these kind of right but still very wrong solutions. And at the end, I just take the average. Yeah? So if there are two reviews and one said, okay, this is 12 points, and the other one said, okay, this is just 6 points, and I take the average of 9. And this works in most cases. Then it's also very interesting because you can check in e-learning system, in this Moodle, at what time of the day students submit. And so now it's 9:30, and as in this talk, attendance is rather light. Yeah, students, so the busiest times for our e-learning systems are in the evening. There most stuff happens, and then but until late in the night, but let's say at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in the morning, you could shut down all servers. No one would notice, because there really everyone is asleep. And then I've collected some fun facts. Of course, it's a German university, so I have to translate the German people can laugh right now, but for the other ones, I have to translate it into English. This is a screenshot from the submission page in our learning management system. And this is the file name of the file that the student submitted. And this file name translates into full points, which I think is very interesting. If, as a student, you submit your solution with the name full points, or someone has submitted his solution under the name my own solution, and then as a lecturer, if you think, okay, if there's a file on the computer of the student that says my own solution, is there also a file that is named solution of my friend? And this is also quite funny. This says submit me PDF. Yeah, so, and to be honest, always interesting things happen. If you really, this is also a method where you can really get the students working during the semester, and not push everything until shortly before the lecture. So if, yeah, as said, there are 13 different tasks that have been developed so far for all different topics within fundamentals of electrical engineering. And I have one simple task for mathematics, yeah, where it makes sense to have this randomization, so where people get different diagrams or different circuits, or yeah, problems where you can do this randomization, and where it's still possible for a computer algorithm to understand the problem and to generate such a sample solutions. And so I've done it 4 years now, this method, 8 semesters with 36 runs, and as you can see, generated using LaTeX lots of these personalized tasks, and high number of students submitted solutions and a very high number of peer reviews that have been done. There are some links to further information. There's a lightning talk, but everything here is in German. I frequently Twitter about this method under German hashtag personalisierte Aufgaben. There's an article in the German LaTeX journal Technische Komödie from German Dante e.V. From 2 years ago. And there's also an FAQ with lots of questions on SlideShare. And now I will also put the link to the slides into the Zoom chat. And so this finishes my talk. And now I would be happy to answer some questions.
Thank you a lot, Mathias, for your talk. That's really interesting. And I like your statistics about submission time.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, if you would do statistics with this conference, you would get to the same diagram at the end.
That's probably the typical way of working, in fact. Are there questions? I have one about the scalability. You answered a lot of questions already by showing that you're managing the tests for 200 students at the same time. How much work does it take you to handle that?
You mean how to generate such a task, or how to
as a whole for one? You spoke about cycles of 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, so for one cycle, of course, it's distributed. The work is a little bit distributed over these 2 weeks, but let's say I need half a working day to maybe 1 day. Yeah, because some of we at the moment we have a company that programs a new module for this Moodle e-learning system that should be able to do all the stuff on its own. So where you just upload PDF files of tasks and sample solutions, and then it does all this. Students submit something, you send back something to the students. Students submit something, you send back something to the students on its own. Some manual work is here involved because I need to download these zip files, unzip them, run a program that does like this, run a program that does like this. So this takes some time for me, but it's worth it. It's not too much. So for one full cycle with this, let's say, 200 students, 150 solutions, I need maybe 1 day. And the most time, as usually, I need for students that do something wrong. Yeah, so that submit to the wrong form, or that submit in the wrong format, or where that submit the wrong file, or that forgot about this and this. And then you need to send emails back and forth with the students. And this takes the most time if something does not strictly keep to the procedure and to the format.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and if you have 200 people and just 10% of them do something strange, let's say 20, and for each of these students, you need 5 minutes or 10 minutes to correct something, yeah, then 2 hours are over, unfortunately.
And how is human interaction with the students? Because I guess when they notice that they got a random subject, they ask questions. Maybe they are worried that in their case there is no solution, for example. So they
yeah. So of course we have still the usual lectures, and the students have 1 weekly exercise, and they can ask the tutor at these exercises. And there are also office hours where they can come and meet the human and ask about the task. But the first thing that they will really always do, and I think it's quite natural for students, they will ask their fellow students, look, I've got this task here. I do not really know what to do. Do you have an idea? Yeah? And I mean, this is one of the things that we really want to achieve with this method, getting the students interacting with each other, and not just talking about what was on TV yesterday or what funny video they found on YouTube, but getting the students talk and discuss and interact with each other about engineering problems. Vic van Dijk has raised his hand.
Yeah, I've got also a question. I find it a really nice presentation, and this system reminded me of my secondary school, where the teacher said, okay, you are together in groups of 4 and you should explain a bit of the lesson to each other, because he said, well, then you learn the most. And then later on in life, when I had to teach some classes, I also discovered that I understood the subject of thermodynamics myself better when I taught it to other students. So I was thinking, besides this system of the assignments you have to correct for each other, do you have other incentives so that the students teach to each other? I mean, you just told that it's about to happen, but do you do more things to steer this, to achieve this?
Yes, of course, this learning by teaching is a well-known method in didactics and pedagogy. So we have a method. I'm not sure how to properly translate it. I would say I, you, and we. So in the exercises also we have a method where students get a problem and then they have like 5 minutes to think about the problem on their own, and they should really at first do it just on their own and maybe look up on the internet or in the script or in the book what information might be helpful to solve this problem. And of course then they will not get any further at some certain point, and then they should ask their fellow student, which is right, left, or right of him or her, and in the group of 2 they should discuss about the problem, and maybe the one person found one solution or one idea and the other one found another idea, and then what they could not solve and were not able to solve on their own in this small group of 2 people already, they see, okay, just by discussing about this, we now get further ideas and further hints on the problem, and we maybe develop a more elaborated idea on how to solve the problem. And then, so what they discussed in this group of 2, then they also announce in this larger group, and then all these groups of 2, maybe in a typical exercise you have like 5 to 8 of these groups of 2, then they shortly explain to the other groups what would be their solution to the problem, and then finally then, okay, you agree on this might be a good solution for the problem. Now let's write it down on the blackboard and see if it works. So this is also what we do. But as all these methods, it works quite well in the first week and in the second week of the semester. So then if students are always just as motivated as they really have time for the subject, so if then some other subject draws more attention, it's always difficult to really engage the students in such things. And sometimes students just say, look, we have no clue, just tell us what the solution is. But this is of course not the best way of learning.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mathias.